Welcome to the collective. My name is Leah Bowden, and tonight we are gathering as the Parents Review Society. If you are watching on the replay, welcome. I'm in a live Zoom room. People are still joining us, so excuses as well. Sorry, April, I could have let you do that. I forgot. I have a fabulous helper. Welcome to all of you watching on the replay. This is the Parents Review Society, where we take an article that was written many moons ago by the writers and editors of the Parents Review, which was a magazine for people who pertained to the Charlotte Mason philosophy and her educational ideas, either in their school or in their home. And this went on for many years, decades of articles. And so we're looking at some written by Charlotte Mason we've been looking at, and this one isn't tonight. And we're just having a look at what was written, what the advice was at that time, how they were teaching their parents and educators about the philosophy and how to implement the philosophy. So welcome to everyone joining in the Zoom room. Good to see all your faces. I know it's been a long summer and I'm hoping to come into the autumn and reconnect with you all. I'm looking forward to all the reading and discovering and beauty watching that we're going to be doing. So tonight we are, well, before I start, before I say all that, if you are watching on the replay, we will be chatting a little bit in the chat function on Zoom. I always say this, but just in case you haven't heard me say it before, you won't be able to see any of that, unfortunately. I do recap in the Substack notes, but please feel free to add your comments and questions or whatever you want in the replay post. Please do that. For those who are live in the room, welcome to those who've just joined us. We're so glad you're here. We are going to be discussing How to Keep a Nature Notebook by A.C. Drury. And this is from the Parents Review from 1941. And it was quite a long, a decent, like a decent long length of piece, but a lot of it was Miss Drury's own nature journal entries, which I thought was lovely. And so what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to be, I've kind of made a list of observations of things that I felt like I learned from the piece, and which I'm happy not to share at all, because I'd love you guys to just talk, but I'd love us to discuss not just the often with these pieces we kind of look at the content like a book club. But what I'd love for us to take a step back a little bit after reading it, maybe you listen to it as well. I love that the Charlotte Mason poetry guys do that. But I'd love for us to kind of look at what can we learn from not only what she taught us, but what she shared from her own nature journals herself, and what she almost her expectation of children and the guidance there. So we're really going to look at that. And then maybe if people want to share their own experience with nature notebooking, the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're here for all of it. Maybe this made you feel a little bit intimidating, like, oh my goodness, we do not do it like this, and that's fine as well. So ready for it all. But before we do, I thought we'd start with a poem, because every day should have a poem. And this is from A Thousand Mornings. You know, I love Mary Oliver. This is probably part of the devotions one that we read over the summer. But this is just, she is the best at her nature observations. I don't know about her whether she kept a nature journal or not, but she definitely did that through her words. So I'm just going to read one of her observations one morning, and this one is called Poem of the One World. This morning, the beautiful white heron was floating along above the water, and then into the sky of this, the one world we all belong to, where everything sooner or later is part of everything else, which thought made me feel for a little while quite beautiful myself. That was an interesting one to read aloud, because it all kind of flowed into the next stanza when the one. But many of her poems are basically, you can tell that she walked around writing poetry in the mornings, because many of her poems start off with an observation. I saw the white heron today. I saw the lake was frozen over. I saw a nest, and I think that's a great beginning to our discussions on these nature observations. Okay, so have you all got it in some way, shape, or form in front of you? Or would you like me to share my screen? What do you think? Demel's has got it in front of her. Do you all have? No, Jess is shaking her head. I'll tell you what we'll do. Let me just make sure I've got it.
I did add the link in the chat.
Thank you. I know sometimes it's hard to, depending on what you're on the Zoom on, it's hard to have it, isn't it, up? So what I will do, I'll share my screen. It's absolutely fine. And then we can have a look at it together. Okay, so while I'm doing this, while I'm pulling up this, first impression.
Did her screen black out for you guys? Is it black?
Yeah, I was just about to ask. I wonder if she knows.
Okay, it's good to know it's not just me. I was going through my phone like, oh no, did I do something?
Yeah, I thought I'd done something as well then. No.
There's no sound either.
It just went black. So she'll come back.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah, I've got no sound.
I'll just write it on the chat in case she's like screen sharing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if she actually knows.
Oh look, she's logged in. She's logged out, she'll come back.
Yeah, that's okay. It's good that she made me co-host so it doesn't kick us all out. I enjoyed printing it and highlighting it. That was a lot of fun for me. I like to keep all of the parents' review things that we're reading in a notebook.
That's a great idea.
It's fun to bind them all together. So while I brought like some show and tell items. I didn't know if we were gonna have time for show and tell, but I'll go ahead and do this while she's busy. So let me see if I can. Here we go. Okay. So this is a book that I got recently called The Explorer's Sketchbook. And it's like a huge, thick, like coffee table style book. And it has stories about specific explorers, and then it actually has like their sketch note drawings in it, which is really cool. I just really love to get inspired by, people who have done this before me. And so this was like they would do like they had like sketchbook drawings and stuff. So I thought that was kind of fun. And I just kind of flipped through it. Oh, there's Leah. She's back.
And
I just kind of flipped through it for fun.
Zoom just completely crashed. Everything crashed when I tried to share the piece. So I won't do that because I don't want it. It just completely shut down on me and told me it wasn't going to start back up. And I was like, yes, you are. So,
That's okay.
Thank you, April, for holding.
I brought a little stack of show and tell nature study things because I got excited about it. And so I was pulling from my nature study stack.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So if you can, I'm going to bring mine up on my phone. I won't risk that again because I do want us to crack on with our conversation. But thank you, April, for holding down the fort there. So what I was asking, I don't know if you heard me as I disappeared, was first impressions. Could you, after reading this, listen to it, whatever you did, what did it leave you feeling? And again, you can either type it in the chat or you can unmute and tell us. Just feel free to chat. What did you think? Who's ready to tell us? I'm looking at all your microphone buttons, ladies.
Well, I will just jump in and say I was thankful for her samples because this is new to me. Not that I've never sketched something before, but just keeping a nature notebook. And so it was helpful to see examples of that. And I was also thankful she gave tips of brush strokes, but at the same time, still a little intimidated and gonna need a lot more, particularly when it comes to the brush strokes, because I do not know how to watercolor. But it was encouraging.
Yeah. What I appreciated, Erica, as well, and again, I've been studying this for many, many years, but I loved reading. I've never read this one before. And I think what I liked that she emphasized, she didn't just kind of tell us what to do. She always gave a reason of this is why we ask children to do it this way. This is why we don't just use coloring crayons. This is why we, and it's all, for me, it was all connected in with the learning philosophy. It's all to do with knowledge being owned by the child, and then therefore the putting down of that image onto a piece of paper is a form of narration. So the brush drawing, I'm completely intimidated by things like that. I'm not a natural, I don't, when I try and put on paper what I see in nature, it never looks like it. And I
Nice to know I'm not alone with that.
Yeah. Oh no, we're absolutely not alone. But the principle I hold to very tightly, and so we would do it all the time. And even if I'd look at what was on the paper and think, oh my goodness, what is that? I knew that I was faithful to what I thought I was seeing, and trying to learn how to get the shape of that flower, that bird, whatever it is. But yeah, okay, who else? What were your first impressions of this piece? I will keep an eye on the chat as well if you prefer to do it that way. Melanie said that I felt inspired but also had questions. Yes, we'd love to hear those questions, Melanie. Feel free to put them in the chat. Yeah, Hayley.
Mostly for me, it's like the key of giving them, a bit like what you said, the more you look at nature, the more you make it your own, and then it's more personal. But then you are drawn into the beauty of the world. And so, like, giving your children that gift of seeing the beauty and feeling it's a connection with life and your life. And I think I hadn't really
amazing.
grasped that point of it.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, and she starts off the piece, doesn't she, with that quote about beauty sense, that having that beauty sense. It's not about just being able to spot a robin or identify a celandine, whatever it is. It's actually seeing beauty for what it is. And I love that she started off with that. Yeah, that's great, Hayley. Who else would like to? Oh, Demelza. Yep.
I like the fact it was all about like observation. Like you were saying, it's not about who can do the best artwork. It's not about who can make the prettiest journal. In fact, actually, all the embellishments should only be done at the end if you've actually done the observation bit. Like that at the end. But yeah, and then I really like the how to paint bit, because I've never been a painter, and actually it's really intimidating. Any nature journaling that we've tried has been not with paint, shall we say.
Okay.
And it's not been particularly regular, but what I really like is that observation thing that she was talking about.
Yeah, I love that too. That's great. Anybody else on the first comments, first impressions want to share? Anna?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the introduction. It was just so beautiful and inspiring, just exalting the purpose and nature and all the beauty and delight. That was just such a nice, warming start. I was like, oh, this is so lovely. And then it was like writing lists and I was like, oh flip, I'm not doing any work. It all started really nice, and then I suddenly got overwhelmed with all the dates of recording it, and you're like, wow, to be and have that time or that attention to notice all of those things and write them down. That's so inspiring, although intimidating, but also amazing to think there's so much breadth in how to observe. Watercolor is one, and that's really slows you down, and it's not like coloring. You have to really think about what you're doing. But then there's also the side of actually writing notes down and your attention and the habit and the longevity thing there. You can't just casually notice when the daffodils came out, unless you're at like every year over the years. You have to like do that in the long haul, and just creating like lifelong habit of noticing those things more. I thought that was moment of panic. No, no, moment of like, oh my goodness, that's so intense. But also,
I know.
Then seeing that side of it, of being, that's quite inspiring, just creating habits.
We'll definitely get into the whole panicky bit and how we feel about the details of it, but it was great. And I agree that the beginning was the perfect way to begin the piece, and I loved how she ended with Wordsworth, and she talked about that, like you said, Demelza, the embellishments at the end, but adding that little bit of poetry, which is, we can see that in the Diary of an Edwardian Lady. I was trying to think of the name of it, of those nature journals and those nature diaries, how she has those little bits of poetry and a little bit of history and where names come from. Okay, well, great. Let's go through it. So I'm just going to see if I can bring it up without anything crashing for myself. Bear me a second.
Just to say, Leah, I'm just in case it's problem for you, it might have stopped recording if you came out and on again.
No, it's still recording. I think because I made April a co-host, it keeps recording, which is fantastic. But thank you, Anna, because that would have been awful for our replay viewers. So yes, they would have the recording of April talking about her lovely books. Right, I'm going to try and share the screen. So let's pray it works. Yay, there we go. Okay, let's just close Substack, whatever that is. Oh yeah. Okay, so we can actually look at it together. So the editor's note, fantastic. We get a little bit of background there. Again, love Charlotte Mason Poetry for doing that for us. So here's the little beginning that Anna was referring to. There are few joys in life greater and more constant than our joy in beauty. Beauty is everywhere. And just that, lovely, lovely quote, which is from Ourselves. If you haven't read Ourselves, we read it together last year. You can watch the replays of that. Okay, so let's jump in. Again, straight away, quoting from Home Education, the way to pursue the acquaintance by patient observation is explained in this chapter and also in Miss Mason's other books. Children should be encouraged to watch patiently and quietly until they learn something of the habits and histories of living things. So I think this is important, albeit, maybe you're picturing you can't picture your children sitting quietly and still or whatever that is. And as ever, with all these wonderful, this wonderful pedagogy, we have to then sit with it within our own family and the reality of our lives, don't we? But the truth, it's taking what is the nugget of truth we can take from that, and it's all about the root of observation. And I think that this is a good place to start, because before we even get into have we got watercolors and paper and whatever it is, that we start from a place of looking. And some of us may have a natural leaning towards walking and nature study, and I think probably many of us in England, Great Britain, maybe United Kingdom, all of the things, all of the above, because of our climate. I grew up in a school where we did nature walks, and we had a nature table, and my parents lived by a wood, so we'd go for a walk in the wood. But I know for some of our friends in the States, often the weather is so hot or so cold that the idea of even going outside is not even on the table. So we may have different experiences of what that feels like to be able to just go out and go for a walk. Over my 20 years of home educating, it pretty much was a daily occurrence that we could just go out for a walk, and I'm grateful for that. But no matter what our reality is, this is the beginning place, is the habit of observation. Can we watch something? So whether it's a caterpillar from eggs in the house, in one of those little kits, watching something like that, whether it's just your plot of land, your garden, your window box, that we can all form something that we can watch over a period of time. So I'd love to hear what that maybe looks like in your household. or how that made you feel if you maybe haven't got into that yet and you've got young children, this idea of patient observation. How did you understand that, or what does that look like for you? What's your experience with that? I would love to hear from you guys. What does patient observation look like in your house? Would anyone like to offer? Erica's unmuted.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So this, like I said, was new to us. I wanted to start this summer, and I started with just taking my littles, who are 3 and 5, and I found the first thing came with just awareness of wanting to do this, increase my awareness of seeing things around me. So as we were driving near a lake, I spotted a blue heron and I was like, oh my gosh, that's really beautiful. Let's go back and observe it. So I turned the car around and we went back to the park and we observed it. And the kids are really into it, which for me just kind of really reminds me of that first principle. Children are born persons, because my first instinct would be like, there's no way my 3-year-old's going to do this. But he was totally into it, and the kids kind of just led with, oh well, when the bird moved, let's go and cross this bridge and look at it from this viewpoint, and I just let them lead. And then we went home and so we're going to start keeping nature notebooks, and we just drew it with color pencils. I think I sketched it and then we colored them in with color pencils. But then my 3-year-old and I did that again in the garden the following day with the frog. And then I think just this past week, my kids came in, they're like, oh, we found a caterpillar, and they were observing it on their own and they wanted to draw it. So I just think that was really cool. Just starting with that intention increased our awareness of seeing, and that even though they're super little and like would normally seem very, hyper or low, attention, they were into it. Their attention was totally there. So that was really encouraging for me.
I love that, Erica. That's so encouraging. Yeah. And I'm sure other people can speak to this as well, but when the younger my children were, they would see things that I just hadn't seen or would never notice, the tiniest little cracks and places, or they would spot, even in the house, things flying in, like, what we're like without screens in our windows, but like butterflies would fly in, and we'd have this as a point of our nature observation for the day. But they would see things that I just wouldn't see, and I loved that. Or they would just be a little bit bolder about picking things up or making sure things were back where they were, whatever it is. Yeah, I love observing children when they are around nature. It's just so wonderful, and I love that you've experienced that this week, Erica. Long may that continue. Anyone else like to speak about the patient observation in your home, or even for yourself?
I really like what Erica did there, even just the fact that she turned the car around and went back. Like, that's quite interesting and dramatic for little kids. It's like, well, mum's turned the car around. Like, this means something exciting is happening. It just sets a standard, I think, or a precedent that nature's important. Like, this is exciting. So that's really
right.
But yeah, I remember reading somewhere when my kids were really little, like my youngest was really little, like if they spot like a snail, like the 1-year-old, the 2-year-old is interested in a snail, if you can like just try and keep their attention there a bit longer, than they might have just got a bit bored of it and gone off. But if you can try and like just, oh, look at the swirl, or just try and get their attention like a little bit, go a bit longer. Yeah, I really trying to do that with my now 1-year-old, my third, and she's obviously really little, but just that prolonged attention, try and stretch it a little bit longer. Definitely. I think we'd see that, and now they like might run in the garden. I think something really dramatically bad has happened, and it's like, no, a new bean has sprouted from the bean store. And they're like, mom, another one, like the first bean, or like the first blossom or something, and they like really into it. But yeah,
I love that. It's pure awe and wonder, isn't it? And we have to be captivated by it and run with it. And yeah, the habit of observation and attention really can be encouraged by us by helping them linger a little bit longer. And I definitely talk about that quite a bit with just that. And that I like that what you just said about if it is a snail or there's something, a flower, that even just noticing one more thing, like, oh, I wonder what's behind it. I wonder what color would you call those petals. It just helps them linger a little bit longer, which then, yeah, encourages that observation and attention. I'm just jumping into the chat here. I don't want to miss any of your lovely comments. Yeah, Demelza was saying was encouraged by the children's entries too. They're a lot less intimidating. Yeah. Shannon's saying, I appreciate in nature journal, it's your own words, drawings, poetry. Yes. Amy's saying for the very, very little ones, we have a few spiders in our back door, on our back door, sorry. Every evening, plus every time we go near the back door, my youngest will point to the spiders and look at them. He's just turned 1, so it's very early days. My older children will notice things in our garden and choose to watch them or sketch them. Over the years, they have collected things like ladybird wings and tiny snail shells. Just this week, we've been watching large white caterpillars in our garden and a pair of butterflies fighting. It's like our whole day stopped to watch those butterflies. Oh, I remember those days, Amy, so much. I remember my youngest, we did baby sign language with all our kids, and she learnt bird pretty early on, and she'd stand before she was verbal in the yard looking at the birds and doing this. It was really, really lovely, a lovely memory of her observing that. Any other thoughts on patient observation before we move through the
I was just going to say that with my 2 girls, like they're 12 and 14 now, they kind of, it was hard when they were little to get them to kind of, you know, to observe for any length of time. And then we had a really good stretch of years where they really would. And now they seem to have gone back out the other side and are just a bit like, oh, yeah, snail. You know, it's almost, do you know what I mean? The patience seems to have gone out of them. I'm not quite sure how to bring that back. Unless it's something really dramatically different and very interesting that they've never seen before. They're just a bit like, oh, yeah, you know, first daffodil kind of attitude. And I don't know whether that's just the age and I've just got to sort of keep going with it, or if anybody's got any tips or tricks for tweens and teens to get them, you know, back into that zone.
I definitely think it depends on their personality, and if they're I've got a friend with home educator with a teenage daughter. I think she's 18 now, but she's never switched off from her passion for nature and bird. And so me and her daughter talk all the time about what we've seen and all this kind of stuff. Her other kids aren't the same, but I feel like mine have kind of done that exact same thing. So they were like absolutely gorgeously whimsical and observational when they were little. And then they kind of went through this thing as if it was like just my thing, like, oh, mum, come on, keep walking.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. We'd still go on all the walks. They were very outdoorsy, and you know, they but then I found as they came into a little bit more independent life, and especially as my side moving away or traveling themselves, they would be the first, and you guys have heard me say this before, they'd be the first to send me pictures of things they'd seen and beautiful sunsets, the moon rising. My son, who's an electrician, whenever he'll see a fox, he'll find a nest on a site, he'll take a picture, send it to me. So I feel like whatever our kids' personalities are, whatever stage, and people will have all different stories of their teens, but my experience has been that the fruit of what was done in those younger years actually does stay with them, and that's the hopeful thing. I love it because it actually isn't just mum's thing. They realize, oh, I actually love this as well. My 22-year-old messaged me this week saying, I think I want a Mary Oliver book for Christmas. And I was like, yes. Yeah, she's, you know, like she's a big reader, but she's never quite got into poetry. And so you never know coming back through.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that I think it's probably like you say that it is that, because there's been pushback in other areas of things that we all used to absolutely love, and now it's as if it's just like you said, oh, that's just mom's thing. Like, oh, mom's on about that again, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, I think.
But little do they realize is that Charlotte Mason talks about the mind gallery of this collection they've been curating, hidden in their mind and soul, and it does come back, and I've loved watching that and seeing that. And so with my I've, got a 14, 15-year-old now, seeing, I mean, she does love to see things still, but it's not quite the same. But I know there's that hopeful, okay, no, I know it's in them. It's fruitful work and it's deeply rooted. Yeah. And just like other things that change as they go through those changing years, they come back around. And I'm probably a testament to that, of my mother, who raised us on poetry and nature, and I didn't even think about it for like a decade, and then now look at me. Anybody else want to help Jess with any encouragement or things that you're spotting? Yes, April.
I had some thoughts on that. So I have a frustration that I live in the Arizona desert, which is the Sonoran Desert, and so there's a lot of life and beauty there that you can find if you look closely, but there's also just not as much change throughout the year. And so it can be really frustrating for us to like want to see change. And then I started experiencing that with my kids, where they're just like, it's always the same. Like they would just be frustrated with nature journaling. So I started introducing things like books that have drawings like inside them, like nature drawings inside them. And so then we would read the books, and then we would look through here, and then we would draw from the book. Like one of my favorites is this one by Julia Rotham, The Nature Anatomy, because it's all, hand drawn kinds of things. And so we started doing stuff like that because we weren't able to see like all those trees or things like that, but we could start with a drawing and then do our own drawings. And then we could like look at YouTube videos, we can look online, we can look at other books and stuff. And so that has been like a lifesaver for us because we can't always see a lot of variety. So
April, I feel like you guys should be like an expert on like cacti or something.
We are. We are. When we go out in the desert, like we can name every single cactus,
I love
every
that.
single
I love
plant.
that.
We can look at the plant and go, oh, it's gonna flower soon, or it's going, it's too dry, or like
Yeah.
my kids are definitely, but they're so over it. They're so tired.
I know.
So
That's it. But
when we go somewhere else, they're
yes.
like, oh my goodness. Like we went to Oregon and there was moss growing on the trees, and we were all just like, what is this? Like there was just so much excitement because it was so different. So
Yeah. And that's I always find that fascinating about that Charlotte Mason's ideas, are they've become well known and loved worldwide. But there's such a big emphasis on nature study. But her writing is taken from the experience of Europe, but also especially England. And we can pretty much, yeah, you might need to put a few layers on in the winter, but we pretty much can go out all the time. You can go outside every day, and she did. And so you have to interpret it through the lens of your life, don't you? It's really important that, how, if you're living in Alaska, I remember coaching a lady who was living in Alaska, and it's not even just the temperature, it's the dark, it's just dark all the time. Like how she remember her saying to me, how do I do this in Alaska? And being creative, using books, using documentaries, still, learning about the Alaskan landscape, even in the midst of the darkness. Yeah, such a good perspective, April, and very important. Okay. Let's have a look. Melanie's saying, so funny, we were excited yesterday to spot a cactus on a hike here in the middle of Tennessee, an uncommon find. I love the idea, April, of expanding the nature study on by looking at sources from other locations. So obviously this piece is all her nature observations are and she talks about different places in England, the south and the north, and they are taken from very English examples of trees and flowers. But let's go down a little bit now. Let's look in this piece. So again, we've got quite some big chunks here. Very conscious of our time together. We've got this quote from Parents and Children. Our first thought with regard to nature knowledge is that the child should have a living personal acquaintance with the things he sees. That brilliant goes along with our conversation about observation. But think about the language: living, personal, you know, if we can get up close and personal, that is better. A lot of insects or birds fly away, don't they, and disappear. So sometimes it is taking that photograph or finding that image and then looking at that back at home. I love this bit. We attach great importance to recognition, and this for me all ties with visual memorization, narration. You know, those threads of the philosophy come through every part of this and every area of a child's education, of what they're learning. So let's jump into this bit about brushwork. So again, I think the question here is not have we got the best brushes and the best paper, and you know, can we follow the technique, which I think is secondary to why is it important to do it in this way. So we kind of have mentioned it a little bit already, but why don't you guys have a little discussion about that and open that up. This method of putting what we see onto paper, or putting what the child see onto paper, she's very much about the brushes. What did she say here? Yeah, the twig should be put. Oh, she talks about the light, doesn't she, here? For brushwork drawings, the first essentials are some good drawing paper, clean watercolor paint. So obviously she's talking about having the good stuff, and special books, clean water. She goes into the details here. She talks about the light, and what she's very practical. I mean, it's a very practical lesson here. It's really helpful where to look so that you get the right light. The light should never be in the artist's eyes. I don't know if you've got a lot of time to be thinking about that stuff when you're out and about, but again, helpful lesson. Time is too precious to be spent in making shadows on the background. I don't know. I don't remember my kids, any of them, trying to make shadows. Maybe some of yours do. It would be far better to use it for painting another flower. Time must be taken to study the subject, and there is a great deal to be noticed about a twig whilst painting it. The width of the stem, the stiffness or pliancy of the twig. And so again, we get this detail of looking at each aspect and getting that on paper. Okay, so why the emphasis on brush drawing? Why the emphasis on putting down straight away what we see? What are your thoughts on that? Maybe your experiences on that? People have started to say already that they feel intimidated by it, but anybody got any thoughts on this idea of how you put it down? Does anyone do this to a T?
Well, we have the watercolors. I don't do squeezy paints, acrylics very often because it's just too messy. But we do have watercolors that the girls can just use whenever they want to. And yeah, my 5-year-old does use her pencil to draw something, and then we'll paint it with watercolor and try and match the colors, which is really lovely to see. But it is yeah, I just wonder how that will develop. But it is nice to just always let them just have access to watercolors, I've found, because it's not that messy. Yeah, and getting them like not scared of it, whereas I'm intimidated by doing it myself. But for her, it's like what we've always done, so she's more familiar with it, and I think they enjoy a different medium, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting what she was saying here. I can't see where it is now, but it, instead of just the pencil coloring in, which is maybe more of like grab a pencil, just quickly scribble, you can maybe rub it out. There's like more of a thoughtful process going on,
right?
That you can't just quickly erase it, or which is interesting. I never thought about that side of it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of what I'm wanting us to get to, is if you think about the philosophy as a whole, what you understand and what you know, the foundations of that, they're all here in these reasonings. And the reason why, you know, she's talking about getting the paint on the, you know, and just putting it down, or just making sure you're getting that outline and drawing what you actually see. She even talks about later on, doesn't she, the size and the that itself, like even if you're doing a little spider's nest, whatever, that itself is part of the nature journaling, it's part of the notebooking. But it's about it's almost like, if you think of it like copy work, it's about mastering something, but using, where with copy work we're using a living book, a living sentence, beautiful language, and copying that into the child's, copying it into their own notebook and making it their own. They're mastering those letters and those shapes. With nature study, we're looking at, it's not a living book, but it's a living thing. We're looking at beauty in nature, capturing that image, whether it be while you're sat there or from a picture afterwards or whatever it is. And in the same way as you would with copy work, you're actually kind of getting that image down onto paper, and it's about the shape and the detail and not the perfection and getting every single bit, you know, colored in and right. And that can be very hard for children. It can be a huge barrier because we're all contending with perfectionism. We're like, I had that so often with mine, is the screwing up paper and crying, and I'm like, how do I overcome this? Which is another conversation, maybe for later if we've got time. But the reason behind this method is all really tied into them being able to convey this image of what they've seen, which is like narration, which therefore then imprints on their minds and becomes their own. So because they have drawn that celandine and they've got the shape of it in March, the following year, because they remember that image and they spent time over the leaf and over the flower and over everything, the following year when it appears again, I recognize that I've got that image in my mind. And that's really the process of what's going on, rather than perfect art. Yeah, perfectionism is April's worst enemy. I mean, so many of us deal with that. Melanie's saying, this week my teen has refused to try to record anything from our time outside, saying that he doesn't enjoy drawing anymore because he's a perfectionist. So, and this is a really common thing. It can be really, really tricky. Demelza's saying it's probably the main reason we haven't journaled much. Nothing to do with them. It's all me. Yeah. And we do really yeah, we put that on our kids often, don't we? Because we're intimidated by it, and we're not just getting on with it, and doesn't matter what it looks like and drawing, because we're caught up with that does pass on to our children. So I mean, we haven't got tons of time because I do want to focus on what she says, but there's lots of things. And just while we're here, if you are dealing with that, I was just chatting with someone just before this session actually about overcoming barriers with nature journaling and things and nature. But I highly recommend tracing paper. And this is what really helped my eldest especially overcome some of those barriers to learning how to get that pencil on paper, or the paint on paper, and the shape of things. But I spent some time using with my kids field guides and tracing paper, and we just do some sessions. I guess it's a bit like an art lesson really, where we were just learning how to observe, and we were using British birds or British trees and British wildflowers. I had 3 books, and then they would just spend some time. I would always pick ones that were out at the moment and they could see them outside, and I would just put some tracing paper on a whole field guide, and they would just slowly get used to, okay, this is what it feels like to do the stem, this is what it feels like to do the petals. So that when it came to having a go of getting those images down on paper from what they'd seen, it was less intimidating. You know, it took longer with some kids than others to get over that. And in fact, my eldest, she loved tracing paper, carbon paper, anything that kind of gave her a little bit of support, but still felt like she was recording what she'd seen. It was, you know, removing a barrier and creating a connection. I don't know what the writer of this article would think of that method, but I had to do what was right for my kiddos, of course. Amy's saying here, I found it really interesting as a person who loves watercolor painting for myself. It's definitely something I would like to try in the future, especially having the light on a specific side thing. I did try taking watercolors with us when my girls were younger, but it was difficult. Yeah, I always ended up all over the place if I took paints out with me. This year, with having less opportunity for watercolor, I've been focusing on pencil sketching for myself, and for nature study, we've been taking one pencil and a sketchbook with us because we have so many other things to bring. It allows us to focus on the shape and shading. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, Amy said my children have really loved how to draw books. It helped them feel more comfortable with the shapes of birds. Yeah, so that's a series of books, isn't it? How to draw. They are very, very good. Yeah, Shannon's saying if I am excited and they see my mistakes, I think it helps them be okay with their own imperfections in drawing. Yeah, we have to set an example. It is really, really important. Please feel free to unmute, and if you've got stuff you want to say, please go for it. I will keep moving through because I want to make sure we get down to. So we've got some of her observations here, or a child's observations. Let's have a look. April 6th and 7th, 1936. And this is just a written little note here, which is lovely. And then we've got April 1933. When we are in the habit of looking about us, we get the most delightful surprises out of doors. Even if we can only go a short distance, things we know quite well can fill us with wonder and delight, such as the stigmas of the sorrel or the stinging nettle, chased seeds in the stitchwort capsules, crescent-shaped leaf-like stipules on the young hawthorn shoots. We may see a squirrel with his cheeks full of nuts sit up on a pine tree to nibble one, or we may find his front tooth marks on the hood of a toadstool. And she goes on there, I love this. We must take care to write down nothing but what we have seen or heard, smelt or tasted. Just as a note, the editor has put a little thing about not eating things while you're on a nature walk. I don't know if you all noticed that right at the end. Let's just go. I saw it right at the end. I was like, specimens found in the wild should not be tasted except under the guidance of an experienced naturalist. I was raised by a forager and an eater. But I love that. I love this because I personally experience this wonder even this morning. You'll laugh at this, guys. We were just discussing before we started recording how there was a nip in the air this morning. It was about 7 degrees here where I live. And the light was beautiful. It was just very autumnal. The sun was coming up, and I was up and around before anybody else, and I was opening the curtains in our bedroom. Dave was just waking up, and he said, can you just tone down the Disney? And what he meant was, I was just so excited, like going, it's so beautiful. Look at the lights. He's like, just tone down the Disney princess vibes. Can you just calm down? I'm just waking up. And that's me as a 50-year-old, still very excited about these gorgeous days and seeing things starting to change and the colors change and the sun come up and the birds I can hear some have obviously have gone now, emigrated. Some have gone that were here over the summer, and I'm hearing the robin more, and I just love it. And because I've had so many years of that of observing and enjoying and delighting, it really does grow in you, and it really does becomes a habit, and that habit forms joy if you allow that to happen. So yeah, today I had to learn to tone down the Disney, whatever that means. I will always be quoting that. So I'm skipping around here on her observations and these lovely things. Please, guys, jump in. What are your thoughts on these pieces from the nature journals. What do you think about this? How do you feel about this idea of just taking notes? Do you guys do that? Do you make your own notes? Do you have a family notebook where you jot things down? Do you think this is something you could take on and do? What do you think? It's not all about the drawing, but it can be about the writing down and recording. Erica, I can see you're still unmuted. Out in the outdoors.
Yeah. This is probably where I'm most comfortable. I'm like, oh yes, I journal. I can absolutely write about what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So no, I appreciate how she goes into the detail, because it just helps me, I guess, like observe better, you know, to notice better when you read someone else's observations. So I appreciated just how detailed it was.
Yeah, I loved it. And I like that you can be, you know, it is observing, it is writing down what you're seeing, but you can be creative with the language, and we learn that from the poets, don't we? I think it's wonderful. Anyone else? What did you think about jotting down?
I really liked the call to like use the Latin language,
Yes.
and incorporate classification, and like she says that several different times, you know, using the botanical terms is the shortest way of stating facts and helping us condense our notes. Like I thought that was really neat. I've always wanted to teach my kids Latin. I've always wanted to do Latin lessons. It's never fit in our curriculum, but we have done Latin through like writing down nature, you know, nature notebook stuff. So I do feel like they've gotten some pieces of it, and then root words and things like that. But yeah, I liked that mention in there.
Here we are. I found it. Yeah, I love this as well. And I tell you, what I learned from this, and we always wrote the Latin in our nature notebooks. But what I've taken from her piece here is that idea of learning about the groupings of flowers or trees or birds. So she does the bit about ranunculus. Where is it? But basically she names like 2, 3 or 4 different flowers, but they're all ranunculus something, and I was like, oh, they're all part of the same family, and Latin teaches us that when we're looking at the roots. Yeah, I mean, I started doing it, we just thought it was a bit cool, you know, we'll learn all the Latin, but then when you start to realize, oh, I'm understanding these root words, and then we're starting to see why these flowers are out at the same time, or why that one is similar color but it comes out at a different time, and it's actually part of the same family. So I love that. People who have begun to learn Latin would be well advised to incorporate the scientific names of flowers in their flower lists, for these names show a relationship for classification where English names cannot. Yeah, so it's almost giving, even though it's a completely different language, it actually brings understanding and context where English cannot do that. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah, I loved it.
I was going to say, on the complete flip side of that, we quite often look up the kind of, you know, the localized names for flowers and plants as well, because that's quite fun as well, isn't it? You know, ones that have got these weird and wonderful kind of old folklore names and stuff. So yeah.
I've got a book on that actually, of just like where the flower names came from, and some of them are like Shakespeare, some of them that sometimes will grow in the garden, we will have read about them in a Shakespeare play or something, which is very cool. Very, very old. Yeah, I love that, Jess. That's great. We've kind of skipped past we've brought up a couple of times about the lists. I think Anna may have said it earlier on. In the Armits Museum in Ambleside, you can actually look at how they did the lists, how the schools did the lists. And I actually love a good list. I have lists on my phone mainly for, you know, films we've watched as a family or books I've been reading. I do like a good list. And when I saw these kind of beautifully handwritten lists, it really is very, very simple. It is just a calendar of firsts. So when you saw the first daisy and the first, you know, celandine or the first catkin on the hazel tree, and you just write down the flower's name and then the date. And so you might then, I think what is interesting for this kind of stuff, if you do it, we did it over a few years, probably a couple of years really. But if you did have the habit of doing that, one example of what you could spot. So blackberries that grow en masse here in England, in the wild. When I was a child, blackberries were like a September thing. Like we picked them in September. And then over the past few years, I don't know how many years, it's probably much longer than I realize. August, they've been appearing in August. Like August suddenly became this blackberry time of year. This year, there were the first blackberries I picked, which were big, juicy blackberries, were the end of July. Now, if you imagine you're doing these calendar of firsts over quite a few years, you'll start to see these shifts of like, what is going on? Things are changing. This is when we saw the first, for me, I like to write down when I hear the first swallow, or, and it's something that I know comes, it's like this sign of early summer. I see the swallows, or I, see a sand martin or something like that. These birds that are coming, making their way up the warmer climes of Europe, and then appearing in England. And you see this shift over the years, whether it's backwards or forwards, because of these lovely lists. Amy, have you got a child pressing on your keyboard? Eric is asking, would you write the list in the back of the nature book? So yes, you could do, absolutely, in the back of your nature notebook. It's all right, the baby had things to say, I could tell. I love it. Yeah, and in these the examples that I saw in the Armit, they would have a nature, like a nature notebook, and then they had almost like a clipboard A4 size piece of paper with their lists on, and that they would just go through, like one for birds, one for wildflowers. It's really actually quite simple, as most of these things are, but we overthink them, don't we? And so we hear about them in this article and we're like, oh, that sounds very intimidating. It really isn't. You just need to, get yourself a piece of paper and get a ruler and draw some lines, and then just start to write them down. That's all it is. And if you're a digital person, open up your Apple Notes, make a list, just do them on there. It really is about capturing, this calendar first. And obviously, if you are a super creative analog person, you love to make these things, then do it beautifully. Just like Lynn Seddon does, all her stuff is just gorgeous. Does anyone do it already? Melanie said, I like to record the first hummingbird back from Mexico in the spring. Yes, Melanie, exactly. I love this. I love it when I hear the swifts. The swifts return in late May, and they've got this high pitched shriek. And I just know, okay, it's almost summer. Summer is coming. Yeah, it's great. Any other thoughts on that calendar first, or on Latin, or on her observations, the notes here? Please do unmute, or
I was just thinking what would quite tie in quite interestingly, if you did do the the list of firsts, would be if you'd done weather observations as well, and then you could kind of look if there was correlation between, when you were seeing the first whatever it was, and as to what weather was happening and if that had an effect and stuff. So my mind is like running away with this now, and I wish we'd started it years ago so we had all the data to like look at and everything.
Absolutely brilliant. And you can just start it this year, Jess. Don't worry about whether you did it before. You can start it anytime. Anyone can start it anytime. That is really good. We, over a few years, we did two things that were very, very simple and did what you just said. And some of you guys will have heard me talk about this before. I bought a really cheap, I think it was from the pound shop or something, a diary that was like a one, when you opened it, it was a week to view. and we would do something called a doorstep observation. So even this was as my kids were getting older and we didn't always have those really long nature walks in the day. They would have to stand on the doorstep because we live in a park, and I would say, right, what's the weather? We used to find out the temperature, write down the temperature, and then what's your woodline observation of the day? And we did that. We would just write it down in the morning, and we would write down the temperature, and we would then, as part of their maths, we would then plot a graph. So we do the month and then we do a graph, and we did that over a few years, so you could see the change in temperatures over a few years. But it's just so simple and didn't take a lot of money or time or anything, but it was just being consistent, and consistency actually really pays off for these things. Doing research, that's just research, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, if your mind is going all over and you're feeling inspired by it, just go for it. I think it's great. Amy, I like the idea of having a week to view, noting the first on the date space in that diary. Yeah, it's so easy, Amy. Farmers almanac books would have local notes from the past few years. Yes, yeah, we have an almanac. I'm trying to think of the lady's name who writes it. She does a podcast as well on the first of every month that I always listen to. I love it. Do you know that one, Jess? What's her name?
I can't
And they
think.
do that sound, don't they?
The found sound,
found
and it's the
sound.
perfume thing, isn't it? But I
Yes.
can't think of any of the names or anything now off the top of my
Because
head. But
it's
yeah, it's
after
really,
9
really
o'clock.
good, isn't it? Yeah.
I'll
Linda
find it.
Lander. Is it Linda Lander or something like that?
Yeah, that sounds about.
Yeah.
But she does the almanac, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And it is lovely. I'll find it in a second. But yeah, that's a lovely podcast.
I have a
Oh, God.
controversial opinion.
Okay, go for it.
So towards the end, she says, apart from astronomy, the rule that should be to paint life size, the size itself being in nature note. Once you exaggerate the size or diminish it, the record cannot be trusted.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to paint a saguaro cactus in life size? Like what?
Yeah.
Like how, like even a leaf, like if you get a leaf that's large enough, it's not going to fit on my nature notebook
Yeah,
page.
that is interesting, isn't it? I know.
Does everyone else draw life size, or am I the only one that's always shrinking things down?
Anybody who else wants to comment on that? What did you think about the life size comment, guys?
Yeah, no, it's impossible, isn't it, really? I mean, you could do the leaves off trees, but how could you ever do a tree or a view or yeah, no. I find it a bit odd that.
Yeah. We try and do measurements. So like we've got these huge poplars at the side of our house, and we were trying to, which is quite cool, like exercise of trying to work out, okay, how do we figure out how big these are, and write that down. So we tried to write measurements down and do scales, and which is again all very scientific, isn't it? But yeah, we could, I don't know how you would do that. I guess as much as possible. Again, this is my rule with all this stuff, is like, what's the nugget of truth here? What can we take from that? And that for me is where possible, do it life size. And her point is, because that is part of the remembering, that is part of the nature journaling. But yeah, we don't want, how would you do a life-size cactus? You're absolutely right. The podcast is called As the Season Turns. Yeah, it's not, for those who like to know these things, it's not a Christian one, and some of the content, you just gotta have a listen and see what you think, but it's got a mix of things in there. But she is the one who does the almanac, and her name is Fern, is the perfume. Leah spelled Lia, Lean Durds. I don't know how you say it, Jess, but maybe you got it right the first time. Maybe you got it right. Okay, right. It is 9:10. So we have, I'm skimming through here. We have lots of these lovely little readings from a nature journal. September the 2nd, we saw the hummingbird hummingbird hawk moth. I've seen one of those in September one year. Gosh, they're incredible. And the hummingbird hawk moth caterpillar, it looks like a tiny, like, I don't know, dinosaur or something. Let's have a look. So we've got lots of things there. We went to the end, talked about the life size thing. Guys, what do you want to pull out? What else did you see? What else did you learn? What other questions do you have? What else would you like to discuss from this? I'm just going to keep going down it. Feel free to unmute. Tell me what you think. Are you inspired? What are you going to go away and do this autumn?
I think it's encouraging and yet also intimidating, the amount of language that she uses. Sorry, my video is still off. Hang on. The amount of language that she actually uses to describe things, because you can observe something and you can see it and you can write it down, but you've got to sort of go away and find out about it in order to be able to write about it. Until you have that knowledge. It's not something that comes just naturally. So it's like an encouragement to do it, and yet intimidating the amount that she already knew.
Yeah. And some people just have I've got, friends who are home educators who this was just their most natural thing to do. And it was kind of, they spent a lot of time doing this in their homeschool and for themselves. For others, they had to kind of learn how to do it, figure out how it fit with their family. I think, again, we're always going back to what do we learn about the philosophy from this? What can we take? What is that element of truth? And I think one of the biggest lessons is, again, remembering the habit of observation and attention are really important. They are well cultivated and curated through observing nature, however that looks in our various climates and places where we live, and having some kind of consistent pattern, whether it's a once a week intentional nature study or a doorstep observation where you're jotting things on a notebook, but that it does become a way of life for many people when you create a habit of doing it in some way, shape or form. And I think then, I mean, I have the noting of what we've seen in the recording has taken so many different kind of I've used so many different platforms and mediums to do that over the years. I've still got an Instagram account called, I don't know what's it called, Leah's Nature Journal, I think it's called, and that's got years of just photographs and the date and what we saw, because at some points of our life that's what we managed. Is like, I want to watch, I want to observe, and I want to capture, but we don't have, I think we were moving house and having babies and all that kind of stuff was going on. So I was like, right, how can we capture what we see? And I still sometimes go back to it because I've seen a flower and I can't quite remember its name. So rather than doing a whole identification thing, I go back to my own notes and pictures and look for it. It's great. And then there were other years where we had all the paints out and the paper and did the nature journals and did the the painting and the observations. And there were years when we just did that little notebook and we stood on the doorstep with teenagers. What's the weather? So I think, what does it look? I think for all of us, whatever season of life we're in and however this made you feel, you have to go, okay, looking through the lens of my family and our household and where we live and where my kids are at, what could this and what does this look like for me in this season? And how can we cultivate awe and wonder still in this, and how do we capture what we see? And then you through that lens you kind of make those decisions on, I do want this to be part of our life, but how can it look like? What could it look like in this season? So I think that's the stuff that's important. Continue to be observant, continue to open your eyes, continue to look, continue to stop and pause and turn the car around if you can, all that kind of stuff, because it really is worth it, and it really is quite transformational when, especially when our kids see us getting excited about something really beautiful. I'm just not, I don't want to miss anything on your, yes, thank you, Amy, Leah, Leendertz. Melanie's saying, she does say to make note if you are representing a magnified version, and describes how to illustrate a taller plant. Yes. So she took that need into account. I think she definitely did. Yeah. And again, I think it's where possible to do that. So if you have any thoughts to wrap up, either unmute, say them, or put them in the chat. I'm going to read this Wordsworth poem to us as we finish. So she says here, quotations from the poets are the aptest expression of our own feelings about nature. Verses chosen spontaneously from the daily reading and recitation of poetry can be entered not as a substitute for the individual notes, but as a beautiful addition to them. People who have been privileged to live in the Lake District are naturally fond of the lines of Wordsworth, or those of us who haven't lived in the Lake District to love his words, which follow. So this is what Wordsworth said. Knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her, 'tis a privilege. Through all the years of this our life to lead, from joy to joy, for she can so inform the mind that is within us, so impress with quietness and beauty, and so feed with lofty thoughts, that neither evil tongues, rash judgments, nor the sneer of selfish men, nor greetings where no kindness is, nor all the dreary intercourse of daily life shall e'er prevail against us, or disturb our cheerful faith that all which we behold is full of blessings. Good old William giving us those thoughts. Okay, so I'm just going to read your last little bits in the chat, and then I shall bid you farewell. So Anna's saying, I've seen people use one of those one line a day diaries for recording first over the years. Yes, that's really, really good. I also like, if you, I mean, many of you have used it or have got it, but Lynn Seddon's Exploring Nature with Children, or any of the stuff that she's produced, she's got more and more stuff out at the moment, actually. She does the it's the name of it's gone out of my head. What's the circle thing that you draw, and you do like colors and a picture every month? Somebody can tell me. You can tell me in the chat. The name of it is completely gone out of my head. It's time of day. Shannon's, because I'm a bad gardener, I noted my first tomato and cucumber. I love that. That's great, Shannon. Nature journaling has been great for me to slow down and enjoy creation. It really does make you slow down. I love that about it. You have to slow down and look. Getting out in nature and observation hasn't stopped over the last 18 months, but we struggle to get that down on paper. Yeah, this year we're using Exploring Nature around the year, from raising little shoots this year, to try to rebuild that habit of nature journaling. That's lovely to hear. Thank you, Melanie. The phonology wheel. There you go. There's many ways of putting down on paper, of conveying and communicating what you're seeing and how you're feeling about it. Well, it is a beautiful time of year to recapture that habit of nature observation, nature journaling, nature capturing, writing all that down, whether that's just for yourself or for you and your children. So maybe we can encourage each other on the Substack chat and check in and see how we're all doing, what we're spotting, what we're seeing. But it is a lovely time of year to start that habit again. So I hope that this piece has inspired you, encouraged you, and that you're not too intimidated, but that you actually know that you can make it your own and do what's right in for your family in your season of life. And, you know, if it's Arizona, get those books out. Hope it cools down a little bit, April. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us live. Thank you for all those watching on the replay. It's been lovely to be with you again. Excited to get into our autumn season, the last quarter of the year. Don't forget, we are reading that C.S. Lewis book, Until We Have Faces. If you want to join us, we'll be discussing that this year. And do have a look on the what's coming up in September. You want to see all the other things that are happening. All right. Have a great rest of the day. All you Brits, get to bed. See you again soon. Bye.